Number 8. Dario Zanin. Italian wingsuit flyer Dario Zanin was among the best in the sport. Known to his followers as the Great Dario, Zanin's talent as a pilot was undeniable. He kept his composure in any environment, and according to one of his fellow flyers, his skill was compared to none. In spite of the many accolades he amassed during his career, Zanin would ultimately lose his life to the sport he loved. On June 9, 2016, he jumped off Aiguille du Midi, a mountain on the French side of the Mont Blanc Massif. Zanin launched himself from around 12,000 feet and started cutting through the air at great speed. Something, however, went horribly wrong. Zanin failed to deploy his parachute in time and brutally crashed into the BOSSONS glacier at roughly 6,000 feet. It was there that his lifeless body was recovered by a search and rescue team 3 days later. At the time, he was the 28th wingsuit flyer to die in France, since the sport had risen in popularity. Wingsuit flying is the practice of gliding through the air using a specialized suit that increases the surface area of the human body. Modern wingsuits designed in the 1990s have fabric under the arms and between the legs. This enables the pilot to control falling and to maneuver through the air. Flying as a basic concept can be described as manipulating the relationship of four forces. Weight and lift ensure vertical movement, while thrust and drag cover horizontal movement. Gravity, the force of weight, is opposed by lift, which counters it and acts in an upward direction. Thrust is opposed by drag, also known as air resistance. The wingsuit modifies the area of the body exposed to wind in such a way that it enables the pilot to increase the amount of lift and drag. What this basically means is that they'll fall at a slower rate while also altering their speed. For every 3.2 feet of drop, 8.2 feet are gained moving forward. This is the glide ratio, the relationship between lift and drag, which experienced pilots can achieve. A flight typically ends by the deployment of a parachute. Wingsuit flying is an adrenaline-inducing practice that enables a pilot to reach dizzying speeds and even maneuver close to elements in the environment. For all the inherent beauty of wingsuit flying, there's also the reality that it can be an unforgiving sport. Errors are costly and typically end in death or severe injury. Number 7. John Strange. Johnny Strange was an American man with an unquenchable thirst for adrenaline and adventure. At 17, he became the youngest person in the world to have climbed the 7 summits, which are the highest mountains from each of the 7 continents. He also reached the South Pole and skydived into the North Pole. In 2010, Strange and 3 others base jumped into Grand Canyon and were stranded there after finding that their exit path was blocked. They survived for 2 nights without food and water, then free climbed out. On September 28, 2015, Strange called a radio station in the US from Switzerland to say that he was preparing another dangerous stunt. He mentioned that he'd be flying super close to stuff. 3 days later, Strange took a deadly fall during a wingsuit flight in the Swiss Alps. He'd launched himself from Mount Gitschen, but the winds were reportedly too strong. The 23-year-old lost control and crashed seconds after taking off. Number 6. Valery Rotsov. When taking on world records, some pilots focus on distance, others on speed. For Valery Rotsov, however, it was all about height. In May 2013, Rotsov set a new world record for the highest wingsuit base jump after launching from 23,690 feet on Mount Everest's North Col. Even though it was a monumental achievement, the Russian athlete kept pursuing greater heights. 3 years later, Rotsov broke his own record when he jumped from 25,300 feet on Choy Oyu, the 6th highest mountain in the world. By 2017, Rotsov had already become one of the sport's living legends. At the time, he was on a quest to conquer the 7 summits and base jump off them in a wingsuit. This endeavor took him to Amadablam, a Himalayan mountain in eastern Nepal. Unfortunately, this would be the world record breaker's final flight. On November the 11th, he jumped off Amadablam and lost his life by crashing into the side of the mountain. Wingsuit flying traces its origins back to the early 20th century, an invention from 1917 envisioned by a tailor named Franz Reichelt. It somewhat resembled a present-day wingsuit. It was a combination of a wing and a parachute. Reichelt had such faith in his invention that he tested it personally by jumping from the Eiffel Tower. Unfortunately, the suit didn't open properly and Reichelt died as he hit the ground headfirst. Since this first tragic attempt, the wingsuit has gradually gone through modifications towards ensuring safety and accessibility to all pilots. The first commercial wingsuit was developed in 1999 by Yari Koosman and Robert Pechnik. Nowadays, the surface is generally made from ripstop nylon, and other materials are added to reduce drag while reinforcing the leading edge. The wings are the ones that trap air and ensure lift. The designing process is still ongoing, with further technical developments in the form of wing packs and jet-powered wingsuits. Wingsuit flying can be associated with the practice of skydiving, as well as with the arguably more dangerous practice of base jumping. The latter involves launching from a fixed structure. As an acronym, base refers to the objects one can jump from, i.e. building, antenna, span, and earth. In skydiving, the wingsuit will take on the wind generated by the speed of the aircraft. Jumping from a fixed position, such as a bridge or a cliff, starts with low initial airspeed and at low altitudes. Pilots drastically increase their freefall time by deploying a parachute, while also avoiding hazards in the environment. Proximity flying, which is the most dangerous wingsuit base practice, generally involves getting close to mountain ridges and faces. Number 5. Roland Simpson. By the time he was 35 years old, Roland Simpson had over 1,200 base jumps and thousands of skydives to his credit. He jumped from such coveted locations as the Troll Wall in Norway, Petronas Twin Towers in Malaysia, and the Cave of the Swallows in Mexico. In 2001, Simpson was severely injured at Australia's Gari Beach. He was left with several smashed vertebrae, a broken pelvis, 2 broken femurs, a broken collarbone, and a punctured lung. As horrific as the accident had been, it did little to slow Simpson down. About a year later, he returned to base jumping. In October 2004, Simpson equipped himself with a wingsuit and jumped off the Jin Mao building in China. At the time, it was the country's tallest skyscraper. As planned, the flight lasted only about 5 seconds, after which Simpson deployed his parachute. That's when everything went wrong. The parachute opened with multiple line twists, which made steering difficult. Simpson ended up flying into an adjacent building and subsequently went into a coma. He was airlifted back to Australia, where he succumbed to his injuries a few weeks later. Wingsuit flying is undoubtedly one of the most dangerous sports in the world. Even some of those recognized as the best in the field have lost their lives during flights. The sport has all the risks of skydiving and base jumping, with some truly terrifying additions. Pilots soar through the air at up to and over 200 miles per hour. As of the making of this video, the record for the fastest wingsuit flight stands at 246 miles per hour, established by Fraser Corsan in 2017. Most wingsuit pilots challenge themselves to go faster, launch from more dangerous points, or glide closer to elements in the environment. This drive adds to the spectacular nature of the sport, but also holds the risk of crashing into cliffs or trees. Just imagine ending up into the side of a mountain at a speed of over 100 miles per hour. It completely dismantles the human body, turning it into a mangled mass of broken bones and torn tissue. One common beginner mistake is, according to experts, a tendency to hug the air. By doing so, the pilot feels that they're catching more lift. At a certain point, the suit starts to stall and drag, which sends the pilot crashing into the ground. One common cause of death by wingsuit flying has to do with the parachute. It either fails to open, or the pilot misjudges deployment, the lines get twisted, or the canopy strikes something in the environment. The sheer degree of control and timing which pilots must possess in flight means that death is an ever-present possibility. Number 4. Dr. Angelo Grubasic. Dr. Angelo Grubasic was a respected engineer in the field of astronautics, who'd worked on propulsion systems for NASA and the European Space Agency. In 2015, he set up the Icarus project with the purpose of designing a safe, record-breaking wingsuit. The goal was to jump from 48,000 feet and fly for roughly 15 minutes at a maximum speed of 280 miles per hour. Grubasic wouldn't live to see his vision come to fruition. After years of trying to make the sport safer, the engineer died during a planned flight in Saudi Arabia. Grubasic was a proximity flyer, meaning that he'd stay close to the landscape. On August 20th, 2019, he jumped from a helicopter over the Azir Mountains. According to his fellow flyers, Grubasic lost control while performing a move called a 360-degree barrel roll. The British pilot struck a mountain ridge at 108 miles per hour and died instantly. Number 3. Dwayne Weston. In 2002, Australian Dwayne Weston won the world title in base jumping. He was among the first to add acrobatic elements to jumps and also pioneered several jumping techniques. Weston's athleticism extended to other fields such as gymnastics or surfing. In October 2003, during the closing ceremony of the Go Fast Games, Weston and partner Jeb Corliss planned a wingsuit flight involving Royal George Bridge in Colorado. The bridges cross a gorge nearly 1,000 feet above the Arkansas River. Weston was supposed to fly over the bridge while Corliss was meant to go under it. Weston tragically miscalculated the wind direction and distance from the bridge. He flew towards it at an estimated 120 miles per hour and struck a railing. The impact was so severe that it severed one of his legs. Spectators from the bridge filmed the incident, capturing the damage to the structure and the crowd's horrified reaction. After the impact, Weston's parachute deployed and he landed on a rock face roughly 300 feet from the bottom of the gorge. He bled to death before the emergency services could reach him. Today's video was requested by Hunter Jones. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. It's sort of paradoxical to find the safety in an extreme sport that has even claimed the lives of professionals who practiced it. Nevertheless, experience and a realistic grasp of one's abilities seem to be the most fundamental aspects. You need to have a minimum of 200 free-fall skydives before you can even consider wingsuit flying. Manufacturers will impose the minimum jumps required prior to purchasing a wingsuit. Beginners will typically use a wingsuit with less surface area and with practice move up to larger suits. Physical fitness is also very important. Manipulating the flight characteristics involves moving the hips, knees, shoulders, and the torso. A pilot requires superior body control in order to attack the wind at various angles. The blistering speed, particularly in wingsuit base, means that there's no time to decide but only react. Aside from hazards in the environment, pilots must also time the deployment of what's typically a single base-specific parachute. This is where proper training and an accurate assessment of a pilot's skill level come into play. Experts argue that the attention on social media and growing popularity is what drives even the best pilots to perform dangerous stunts. Managing this drive might mean the difference between a safe flight and a gruesome death. Other vital aspects to consider are using the proper additional equipment, such as helmets, goggles, altimeters, or GPS devices, and flying in appropriate weather conditions. Number 2. Alexander Polly. In 2013, pilot Alexander Polly launched from a helicopter, then flew through a narrow rock face opening in Montserrat, Spain. The hair-raising stunt earned him millions of views online and significantly added to his growing popularity in the proximity flying community. The opening was only about 25 feet wide. Polly exhibited great control and precision, as the slightest miscalculation would have sent him crashing into the jagged rocks at more than 150 miles per hour. 3 years later, Polly was in Chamonix, southeastern France, where he was keen to fly down Couloir Ensa. This is a steep, 1,300-foot gully known for frequent avalanches. He made the jump, and moments later, Polly's flight partner saw that his parachute hadn't opened. He called a rescue helicopter before he'd even touched down. Unfortunately, there was nothing more they could do for him. He'd violently crashed into a tree and was declared dead at the scene. Before we move on, Official They Will Kill You merchandise is now available at theywillkillyou.com. It's out of this world. Number 1. Patrick de Gaillarden. Patrick de Gaillarden was a pioneer in the world of skydiving, and in many ways the father of both the modern wingsuit and wingsuit base. He was regarded as equal parts extreme athlete and flight engineer. De Gaillarden was among the first people to develop the extreme sport of skysurfing. This discipline involves a skydiver performing acrobatic maneuvers mid-air by using a snowboard. De Gaillarden is also credited for developing the first modern ram air wingsuit in the mid-1990s. As others before him, the French inventor knew that the suit couldn't replicate a bird's flapping wings. He took inspiration from the flying lemurs of Madagascar and understood that gliding was the key. He thus added material to the legs and arms to increase the suit's surface. Base jumping was already an established practice by 1997. It was then that de Gaillarden combined it with his wingsuit, thus adding another dimension to the discipline. He performed some of the first ever wingsuit base jumps. In 1998, however, the 38-year-old pioneer's quest for perfecting his wingsuit design would come to an abrupt end. He was in Hawaii shooting a promotional video and testing out some modifications he'd made to the parachute container. A tragic rigging error would ultimately claim his life. De Gaillarden and 2 others jumped from a plane high above the Hawaiian landscape. The added modifications caused a parachute failure, and de Gaillarden plummeted to the ground from several thousand feet. Thanks for watching. Would you rather experience a wingsuit flight or become the main character in your favorite movie? Let us know in the comments section below.